here with Table Rock Fishing Intel. The last couple of weeks, we've brought you how to win the BFL and strategies to using to compete in that event. However, with all this weird weather, we're bringing you the lake's frozen, and now what? We have two excellent anglers with us this week, one being Shane Williams, who is a local tournament angler. He's a Table Rock Fishing Intel Pro expert, and he finishes high in tournaments, doesn't matter what time of the year it is. The other is Pete Wenners, a highly respected guide on Table Rock Lake, an excellent jerkbait angler, and really excels this time of year. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe, Pete, you came in third place in a Heartland event maybe 15 years ago or so with just two fish, both caught on a jerkbait, both enormous, if I remember correctly. All right. With that said, Vexus Pro Shane Williams, we're going to get right into this. How do you expect the lake to fish once these temps start to swing up and the snow and ice have melted away? What do you think is going to happen?
I think that the fish are going to be very hungry. Personally, we've had the weather, so these fish they're unmolested right now. Nobody's been after these fish at all. I think your deep fish probably won't change that much. Shallow fish, that's one you're just going to have to get out there and beat down and find. I'm not really positive on how it's really going to affect the shallow ones too hard, but I guess I would just be out there looking for the bait more than anything. And we got a little bit of wind or whatever, then that's when I would go up there and start pounding the bank a little bit, because I absolutely love the wigglewort rock crawler, and that's what I would prefer to do when it starts coming on. It might be a little cold for that, so I'm guessing your deeper fish probably is going to be your best bet.
You mentioned the rock crawler wigglewort combo. All the locals love throwing those two baits. Explain a little bit how you say it's a little too cold to be throwing that bait, or what temperature are you looking for to throw that bait?
I'm really not scared to throw it if you're lower 40s or above. Sometimes you just got to slow it down a little bit, just get down there on the bottom, get it digging, then really back off of it and just slow it down. I think they'll always have that reaction bait. It's just whether the fish are there or not.
All right, Pete, this one's for you. As we start to see this ice and snow start to go away, what parts of the lake do you expect will be more productive to find fish, and why after this ice melt and the snow goes away and we can get back on the water?
Well, normally this time of year, the predominant areas are usually the clear water. We haven't had any big rain, so the rivers are not going to be mudded up. But to me, normally it's like from about Big Cedar through the mid-lake, Campbell Point up to Ants Creek, and maybe way up the upper White River. I've seen times where you can't hardly get a bite in the Kimbling area, and then you can make a run way up to White. And even though the water's a little colder up there, a lot of times the fish are a little bit more stable. But right now I think Big M and everything, it's all iced up there. But we fish tournaments. I think Brian and I fished a tournament one time about the same time of year. And we left Kimberling and hit ice about Campbell Point, had to work through Campbell Point, all the way to Shell Knob through ice, and got up there around Big M. And the water was 5 or 6 degrees colder, but we caught a good bag of fish up there. The weights this time of year, we've been fortunate to win tournaments with as much as 27 pounds and as low as 13 pounds, and in different weights in between. This time of year, it could be brutally tough. Or it can be really good. The A-rig will play a big factor. And like Sean mentioned, the deep fish, the deep fish are going to be there till mid-March. We fished a BASS here, the one Mike McClellan won about 5 years ago. I think I had a top 5 in it. But a lot of the guys in the top 10, even in the middle of March, were still catching their fish vertical. And a lot of the fish I caught in that event, I'd be out there jerk baiting, and I'd see them down there, 30, 35 feet, pick up a spoon and catch a few. So, that bite's going to be there, the deep bite. But I feel the bigger weights are going to come on an A-rig or a jerk bait, or maybe even a jig.
When you say the bigger bites are going to come on a jerk bait, a jig, or an A-rig, and you said deeper fish, do you mean that those fish that you catch on those three baits are going to be noticeably shallower, or is there something specific to that?
When I was talking deeper fish, I was meaning more vertical fish. But I will fish that A-rig 35, 40 feet deep. You know, I mean, we had, I think it was an Ahoy's one time, we had over 27 pounds, and most of them fish were A-rig fish, and most of them were 25 to 40 foot deep. Treetops, you know, bluff ends. But, you know, there was a pretty good bite going, a real strong deep bite, but we got onto a pretty good shallow bite for about 3 weeks prior to this cold front. And I don't think those fish are going anywhere. We weren't getting a lot of bites, but the bigger fish, and I was catching them on a jerk bait in the Alabama rig. The hard thing is this time of year, you may only get 3 to 5 to 6 bites. You know, that's all you're fishing for on a jerk bait. A little swim bait and grub used to be a big player, but I found, or I feel that A-rig is kind of taking the place of that. And, you know, one thing that may come into play here with all these shad starting to die and spinning off is float and fly. You know, we have not had really a cold enough winter for the past 5 or 6 years for that to be a factor. I know a lot of guys don't like to throw it that much because it's not like throwing a jerk bait or an A-rig, but I've seen Bill Beck and Bill Babler weigh in 26, 27 pounds on it one day in a Joe Bass team event. So, and it can be a big deal when the conditions are right.
Well, Shane, Pete kind of led us right into the next question, and he mentioned the shad kill. So for you, do you expect to see a shad kill? And if so, how do you approach it when you see dying shad on the lake?
I think there's definitely going to be a shad kill with the water getting this cold. If there's not a whole lot of shad dying, I will fish the area. But if we've got a lot of shad dying, I usually just pack up and go find some shad that aren't dying is my approach. Because me personally, I'm not a good jerkbait fisherman, in my opinion. I try to stay away from that. So I kind of play it out to see how many shad are dying before I go fishing there.
Yeah, I agree with you 100% on the shad when they're dying. If I see too many, I'll move to a different area of the lake or try a few other different creeks. I don't mind a few, but when it gets real thick, I think the shad kill is good. It's just Mother Nature's way of balancing things out on the lake. It takes a lot of the weak and kills them, and a lot of them bigger gizzard shad will start dying. But it's just Mother Nature's way of putting a balance in the lake.
All right, Pete. Well, then this one goes to you since you were just talking about elaborating a little more on that shad kill. What does the type of shad that you are seeing that are dying, does that dictate what type of baits you throw?
Yeah, a lot of times when you're seeing them 1.5 to 2 inch shad, what we call spinning off, where they're just kind of going in circles and they're actually dying. When you start seeing that on the vertical bluff walls, I mean, that's the time to pick up that float and fly. I found you can take like a little swim bait or a little grub, but it's moving too fast. But you take a little 16th ounce, like a Spro jig, 10 or 12 foot leader, and just hang it there, and it looks just like them shad that are spinning off. But as far as the jerk bait, I just soon see bigger shad dying in a place that I'm throwing the jerk bait. If I'm seeing the little shad, especially if it's a deeper deal, I'm more apt to go with the float and fly. But like Shane said, I don't like too many shad dying. I don't mind a few, but when I can see them on the electronics or even visually see them, when the sun gets out, you can see the water shining with dead ones. I pack up and get out of there.
All right, Shane, in your experience on Table Rock Lake, when you see a shad kill, and we're all anticipating one this year, is that something that's good long-term for the lake, for the long-term health of the lake? And does that change how you fish later in the season as well?
No, it really don't change how I fish. And like Pete said, I think it's just Mother Nature. I think there's got to be a balance, and it's just the way it is. And it really doesn't change the way I fish later on in the year. I'm always looking for shad. If they're up high in the water column, whatever, you'll see the fish around them. And I mean, that's where I want to be. I want to be close to them.
All right, Pete, tell us your jerkbait approach. We heard from Shane talking about the wiggle wart when the water temperatures are this low. Tell us your jerkbait approach for when the water is in those upper 30s and low 40s, and how you attack maybe a bank or where you think fish should be.
I used to just kind of slow it down a bunch when the water's real cold. But now with the live scope deals we've got, you can actually see how the fish are reacting to a bait. So it kind of tells you whether you can run it faster or longer between jerks. But I mean, a lot of times it'd be a minute between twitches when it was really cold. And something that I'll do a lot, I still throw an old Smithwick Rogue. I think it's probably one of the best really cold water baits out there. It's just a little harder to throw, than a mega bass or a spro. But as the water warms up, then I'll change to like a mega bass or a mixed stick. But as far as the type of banks, I'll start out on bluff ends and channel swings, and there's no limit to excuse me, how far back in a creek I'll go. Like Shane mentioned earlier about throwing a crankbait. If there's bait 3/4 of the way back in there, if there's food back in there, there's going to be fish in there, especially if it's still got depth. I feel like the water temperature like it is, them fish that are in the backs of the creeks or 3/4 of the way back, just because the water temperature dropped 5 or 8 degrees, they're not going anywhere. They may just pull out and suspend. What you got to do is find what they're going to come up and suspend around, if they'll come up shallow enough where you can access them with the jerk bait. The way the water's dropping right now, I love it because I just soon see the lake down another 5 or 6 feet. Because right now it's hard to find a lot of the trees that we used to fish, and a lot of them have rotted off and fell down. So the lower the water gets down, there's another row of trees out there behind where we normally fish that them fish will stage on.
All right, I have one final question for each of you. Shane, I'm going to start with you. If you could give all of our listeners one tip or a trick or one little piece of advice that's going to help them catch more fish under these conditions, what would it be?
I would say put that A-rig in your hand. I think it has more drawing power than anything out there right now. And of course, more drawing power means more bites. I definitely, like Pete said, I'd be looking for those trees that are right off the secondary points, right off the channel swings. The ones, my guess, where I like to fish is that 25-foot range. I think them fish are very happy there year round, and I think they'll stay there.
When you say the A-rig, is there a particular size of baits that you like to put on that? As far as 2-inch, 3-inch, 4-inch, is there something specific in these type of conditions?
No, I mix that up every time I'm down there. I'll have 2 or 3 A-rigs on different rods, different colors, blades, non-blades. I'll have one basically just all shad looking, 2/8 to the high 3s, for in the center. But I just play with a bunch of different setups, and they'll tell you what they want. And especially like Pete said, with the live units now, they'll break your heart. You'll have tons of them following, but when you find the one that they want, it's like drop shotting. There's no doubt in your mind. I mean, they smoke it. They fly from 10, 12 foot away. So, just play with it.
All right, Pete, this one's for you. Same question. If you could give our listeners one tip, one trick, one piece of advice that's going to help them catch fish under these unique conditions, what would it be?
Don't be afraid to move. It's hard to cover water when you got to fish as slow as you have to fish right now, but try not to fish history where you've caught them before. Go there, check it out, but if it's not working, don't be afraid to pick up and run 10 miles. Go to another arm of the lake or further back in a creek, but try to hit your, I guess you'd call it high percentage areas, a couple bluff ends, channel swings in the creeks. And if that doesn't work in one area, I'll do the same thing, but just in a different area of the lake. Maybe the shad are at a different phase as far as the dying part. Maybe they're already done here or they're just starting in another place. And with the shad dying, I find that it gets the worst whenever the water starts to warm up. Whenever we have that little bit of trend where we've got down to the coldest we're going to get and it's starting back up, that's where I usually find the shad kill. So if you can find a place that got warmer earlier, the shad kill may have already, happened there.
I want to thank both of you. Shane, I want to thank you. Pete, I want to thank you for taking the time to share your expertise with our listeners and our followers here at Table Rock Fishing Intel. This is Kory Mitchell with Table Rock Fishing Intel, bringing you more tips to help you catch more fish at Table Rock Lake.